Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host. And today I have Terry Nelson. Terry is from Fernie. Welcome. It's great to have you on the show today, Terry.
Thank you.
You know, you've just written a book within the last couple of years here that sort of captured the imagination of those that love the outdoors. Fernie and area hiking trails. And you've added a sort of a kicker to that and natural plant compendium. So we're going to explore as to what the significance of that is, and I just want you to tell the audience, tell us about the hiking trails of Fernie and area.
Well, you know, Fernie is in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. It's had a major trail development surge in the last 20 years, of which I've been quite involved in. And a lot of places are not really well known. Mm-hmm. You know, there's lots of, let's not call them secret trails, but just they're not on the radar. So this book kind of explores all those opportunities, and primarily it's about getting people to trailheads. Once they're on the trailhead, you're kind of on your own, and if you wander too far off, you're in the bush and you're lost anyhow. So.
Okay. So I think you told me there were 40 hiking trails that you profile in the book. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So there's 40 trails total, of which 40 are in Fernie primarily, and then of that 40, there's 35 of them, that are in Fernie, and another 5 that are just trails of distinction that are really worthy trails, you know, that are in Waterton and Crow's Nest Pass that are worthwhile exploring it, you know, from Fernie within one day.
Right. So nearby. And
yeah, nearby, yeah.
That people can really enjoy as well.
Yeah.
So what do you think hiking and the outdoors, why do you think it's so popular these days?
Well, you know, when you quantify these days, and I hate to reflect on COVID, but obviously there's been an explosion of interest of people getting out where they can breathe some air, get out into the wilderness, you know, and actually get their heart rate going up a little bit rather than sitting on the couch. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, you know, I think just the general trend is for people to want to experience something outside of their car. Mm-hmm. You know, they want to get out and they want to explore, they want to have some new insights on things that aren't, you know, on the television. So,
mm-hmm. So you talked a little bit about secret trails, and so what secrets are you giving away?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, there's a trail that's called the Ammonite Trail, which is quite well known, but not known in the sense of how to get to it. Mm-hmm. And I was asked when I published the book originally to exclude it because it was supposed to be for locals only. Mm-hmm. And since that time, in my new edition, there's been an explosion of interest and everybody's finding it. Mm-hmm. I went there this year and there was like 18 people there, you know, people from Japan. And so anyhow, I just I've included it now, but that was sort of one of the ones that I would say that's kind of was the most secret. I was trying to keep it a secret anyhow.
Right. Well, like you mentioned, the Rocky Mountains, tremendous opportunities for people to get out and enjoy the backcountry and so forth. Do you think that is something that everybody can enjoy? Is it, or are your trails so hardcore that it's like only an enthusiast?
No, you know, that was part of the intent of the book, is to establish what a difficulty rating was. Say, you know, is it good for families? So part of the explanation and descriptions of the trails are, you know, you can pick a trail that's suited for you, so you're not going to end up in trouble. And conversely, you know, I've been very clear about these are some trails you might not want to go on because they're going to be very difficult and you might get in trouble. So, you know, that's the intent. And I think there's a fairly broad spectrum of trails that are accessible for, you know, they're not barrier-free trails per se, but there's definitely, you know, an easy family walk for 2 hours with your kids or even your grandmother, you know. So.
Right. Do you have a go-to or a favorite trail that you would recommend to people?
Well, I used to always recommend the Fairy Creek Falls Trail, which I still do in some regards as an easily accessible trail, but it's become so busy nowadays. I think it gets somewhere in the order about upwards of 200 people a day during the summer that visit this trail. So I wouldn't recommend that one anymore, just unless you want to go and, you know, bump in and talk, have a social time. But so more so sort of recommending to go to the Matheson Falls. It's a little bit further away, it's a little bit more private. But, you know, as I say that, and I'm kind of how would you describe, you know, I promoted something that when I go there and I see a whole bunch more people there, am I responsible for that? I hope not. Hopefully it's just part of how the evolution of sort of trails in the area are. But yeah, so it's a tough one when you say keeping things secret, you know?
Yeah, trying to keep that balance.
Yeah.
But you know, there's nothing better than introducing people to the wilderness and letting them enjoy it, as long as they do it responsibly, right?
That's the key thing, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to explore the subtitle on your book has to do with the natural plant compendium, and I had to go look that word up.
You're not the only one that has
I
some
wasn't quite
chuckles
sure
on that one.
what you were getting at there. So can you just expand on that part of the book and why it was so important for you to include that?
Yeah. So when I first started assembling the hiking trails, 40 hiking trails, that's only 40 pages, and, with a few fluffy things on the side. So I needed some more content. And because I've been an avid photographer for the last 30 years, and I had a really large collection of plants, and I also, when I'm out with groups of friends, I continually get asked, "Oh, what's this, Terry? What is that? And what's this plant?" And I know the names, whether it's through the Latin names and whatever. And I thought, well, I'm just going to try to do this because most people that go out, that's part of their interest. They're sort of a naturalist kind of group that they have a curiosity about what are these plants, and it's not about what can I eat or whatever. It's just a curiosity, So,
Sure.
And I haven't gone down that path. Those are other people's books that are explicit about herbal remedies or whatever. That's not what this book does. So.
Right. So would you consider your book a field guide, like people?
It's totally a field guide. When I made the comment about the rounded corners, and also the waterproofness of the outside of the book, it's intended to throw in your pack and take it out.
Okay, so let's talk about the rounded corners and the presentation that you've made with the book.
Yeah.
The book itself presents itself very well, full of 4-color illustrations and photos. Very nicely done. How did you achieve that look, and were you pleased with the way it ended up?
Well, having engrossed myself in every other trail book that is imaginable for this region, there's some certain qualities of things that I recognized in them, and that I wanted to have my book convey. And that particular sort of part of the book, as far as getting to that, how it looks. I had lots of help on that. As everyone who works on a book realizes, it's not your own project always. There's a whole bunch of other people that have good inputs, and if you open yourself up to that, your product's going to be better. I have a friend who is the owner of Ulican Books, and he came forward right at the start and said, "Oh, Terry, you're crazy. If you're going to print color book, you're never going to make any money. It's just a stupid pursuit." And I'm just like, well, it's my project, so just I'll get on with it. So did I answer your question there properly? Or?
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, your book presents itself so nicely, and you get a sense of actually being on the trail. So it's like a discovery before you actually hit the trail.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to go back to the plant part of it just for a moment. And what kind of responsibility did that put on you to make sure that all those photos and plants were described properly and identified right and so forth? How did that all go?
Well, I like your term responsibility because there's a certain obligation to have your research done properly when presenting something like that. And I must admit, I ended up through the shuffle of things when we did the design. The first, I'm trying to remember the name when the book goes to the first copy you get to review.
Proof copy.
Yeah, well, they had a different name. Yeah, so the proof copy. It was like all the photos were too small, and we had 2 plants per page. So when we got it back, we went and put 1 plant per page with the description, and so the photos got larger, so you could use it for an identification tool. And we ended up shuffling some photos around that didn't end up being the photo that was with the right plant. So that did happen through the process. I had the good fortune of a friend of mine's father is the botany professor at the University of Victoria. So he did a proofing for me of the all the plants. But it was after the book was out. So, and that, I had a fairly long list of things that were just things, whether it was how you say the Latin name for mint. I had it wrong,
Okay.
So those type of things. There's a lot of those things, but I've never had anybody other than him call me on it, so that's okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't call you on that one.
No.
So again, 40 hikes. You've talked about your favorite one. is there any appetite to expand, like do an East Kootenay, or do you feel that that's already been covered?
Yeah, so, I think I was mentioning what I would recommend for a hike, but my favorite hike is actually the Lizard High Traverse, which is more of a high technical traverse, full day mountain route. But as far as expanding on it, I think, books like Janice Strong's Mountain Footsteps, she's got the East Kootenays covered, and she does a fabulous job. And so I was really sensitive to not wanting to tread in her territory, and Joey Ambrosi in the Crow's Nest Pass. And so that's just why I've included, a couple little snippets of things from outside the area. But to actually go forward, I've got some other things in the work, but that's not what's happening.
So how comprehensive is 40 hikes? Are there lots of other hikes that could have been included?
Not really. No, I think that's, as far as the Fernie area goes specifically, I think there's a few more, there's lots of mountain bike trails in Fernie that people, if you want to go for a hike somewhere and get lost in a maze, you could go up and hike all over the place on those trails. But as far as designated hiking trails, at the time when that was put together, those are all the trails, and there might be one or two, but not really anymore.
Terry, you told me you were the president of the, is it the Elk Valley or Fernie
Trails Alliance, yeah.
Okay. What is their mandate, and what was your involvement beyond just being president of that organization?
Well, the mandate of the Trail Alliance is to be the liaison between government and other financing agencies or funding agencies on behalf of the broader trail using community, as well as deal with, there's hiking trails, there's horse rider trails, there's motorized users, and so those have a tendency to have potential conflicts always. So that was sort of the role of the Trail Alliance as well, is to kind of just be the mediator in amongst all that and try to make it so all the trail users had an opportunity to have their voice. So it's quite a diverse group, and there was a lot of big projects that were undertaken with help of the Columbia Basin Trust funding, as well as the City of Fernie were really, and Regional District were very supportive with a lot of things. So, and when I first started, I had no idea what I was getting into, and was recruited to stop some of the infighting within the group, and it was in its infancy, and because I'd been involved in lots of other trail-related works in the past, someone suggested, "Oh, you should be the president," and it's like, well, I don't know if I've never done anything like that before. So anyway, I jumped in feet first, and sort of everything turned out quite well. So
good. So had you had any experience in publishing before?
Well, only in the sense that I published quite a few sort of technical journals in my past employment, but never a book. So I never really assembled a book. It didn't have to look very good. It was just more about having sort of good technical content. So that aspect of it, I spent quite a bit of time in my previous employment. So,
what's the reaction been to hiking trails?
It's been really positive, and right from the very start when I did the book launch, and there was like 300 people came out of the library, and they couldn't let them all inside because there was so many people. But I think one of the most satisfying things, and I've heard it from a number of parents, is when they say that their kids have the book and the kids are out identifying plants out when they're out hiking. So that, I think I've really hit something with that aspect of it. So
nice to introduce them to the outdoors at a young age.
Yeah, well, I just think the fact they have an interest in it is, I'm a bit astounded by it. It's like, 8-year-old kids that want to know what a balsam root is. Most kids aren't interested in that, but there's definitely some keeners out there, I guess. So.
Yeah. So your book is basically sold out? Is that what you're saying?
The first printing, yeah. So I printed 1,000 copies, of which I purchased 300 overs. You probably know that term. I never knew that before. Those are all things I've learned. So
that's when they forget to turn the press off.
It seems like that must be. I didn't really question it, but they offered them to me, so that's what I ended up with, and I'm just in the process now of trying to get. And I don't know how to even describe it. It's not a second edition. It's just a revised copy, I guess, that I'm trying to put together. So
has that been a lot of work going in and revising, or is it minimal?
I started out with I was going to expand the plant compendium, and then I read a review on it in Tourism Fernie, and it was, complimenting the book, and it said, and the best thing is the non-exhaustive plant compendium. And I thought to myself, I just leave that thing alone, because I was going to double the size of it, just because I have all this information that I've collected since then. And so I've decided not to do that. I've put the Ammonite hike in, like I talked about earlier. And I've changed a few things, and and just like anything, when you go through and get an opportunity to go and review it again, there's words missing, and something spelled wrong. There's many eyes that have been over that before it went to print, but I was pretty shocked when I went through, and you still find stuff. You see it in everybody's publications. So
yeah, as hard as we work to make sure that doesn't happen, it slips in there from time to time.
It totally does, yeah.
For sure. So Terry, tell me about your future projects that you've got in mind.
Well, last 2 years, I've decided that I'm going to collect data on all of the biggest trees in the inland forests of British Columbia. So I've been touring around all over the Rocky Mountains and interior, measuring tree heights and discovering trees, and in the same sense as my plant compendium, I'm going to have a tree compendium of a bunch of the celebrated trees in all the communities from the American border all the way up to north of Prince George and out towards Logan Lake and the Alberta border as well. So I'm hoping to have that together within the next couple of years and publish that book as well.
Wow.
So.
That sounds like an ambitious project and a very interesting one. Tell me, what's the tallest tree so far?
The tallest tree there's 2 trees. There's a Douglas fir tree I found that is 59 meters tall, which is by the Fernie Nordic trails. And there's the tallest western larch tree is in the Kimberley Nordic Center area, an area called Mose Canyon, and it's about 56 meters in height. So those are pretty tall trees.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. We look forward to that
Thank you.
Publication of that book as well.
Yeah.
So Terry Nelson has been our guest today. Terry's from the Elk Valley. Terry, your book is Fernie Area Hiking Trails and Natural Plant Compendium.
Perfect.
A great looking book, and it presents itself very well. Congratulations. This has been Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell. Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host today. And with me today is Bill Roberts. Bill is well known in the Kimberley-Cranbrook area. And Bill, your first book, The Best Miners in the World, really a great read. Can you just tell me a little bit about that book, because we're just going to set the stage for your new book as well.
What it is, it's a chronicle of short stories I gathered over the years, and how that evolved is by sitting in the bar after work and talking to other miners, and there's telling stories. And then one sooner or later, some guy's going to say, somebody should write a book about it. So I wrote a book about it.
Yep.
Did okay. What really pushed it is when I lost my partner in the mine, and I felt that I had to give the miners a face. That would really pushed it. I had to give them a legacy. And so this book, as far as I'm concerned, it's a legacy of what mining is about.
So I think you've mentioned to me, Bill, that you've reprinted that a number of times. Is that correct?
Yes, it went into its 8th printing this year.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Now, you followed that up with a new book in a little bit different format, and actually a novel. The book is called Wild Horse Kate, and I just wanted to talk about that today. So tell us about the new book. What was the inspiration behind it, and how did it all come together?
Well, I think like most people here, most of our family are immigrants. One half of my family came from Ireland, the other half came from Scotland. And I knew what they had to go through, a lot of them, when they came here to this new world. And then I started looking around here, and I said, there's a terrific amount of history in this area here. You know, you've got your railway people, you've got your lumber people, you've got your miners. And then I went into the Fort Steele area, and I started looking around up there, and I went up into the Wild Horse there. And I looked at where all the old miners worked at one time. There's 5,000 miners there at one time. 5,000. That's a lot of people. But if you go down that road, there's 2 miles of just slag that they picked and picked and picked and threw out in the ground there, you know. And I only wish I was there for it. I'd love to have seen that happen, you know, just to be involved in that type of work.
Based on your book, it was a colorful era, a colorful time in the Kootenays for sure. We're talking back in the 1860s,
Yeah.
so a long time ago. But I thought your book really brought it to life, because you were able to really sort of showcase what these people went through. Can you just talk a little bit about your personal connection to the story?
I have to think about my Irish family. They escaped from my granddad had to get out of Ireland because of his political beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
He had to get away from them because there's people looking for him at that time when he come to Canada, and it saved him. And my other side was from Scotland. They're blacksmiths in the shipyards, and there was no work. The only work was when they come to Canada, because who paid for their way to get here was the CPR. They give them jobs as blacksmiths.
Right. So your second book, the new one, is substantially different than the first book, obviously.
I know.
How did you find, here's you sort of a historical record, and then you have a novel. How did you sort of keep those two things separate?
I'm a terrific imagination mostly, and I looked around. I read things, and I listened to people. But there's a lot of information out there if you really go digging for it, And then you just try to put it together and make a story out of it. That's all it was for me. I found it very simple, actually.
Good.
If you've got imagination, you can be a writer. And I don't think of myself as a writer. I think myself more as a storyteller.
Right.
Because I don't believe in abbreviation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like Faulkner. He never did either. So.
Yeah. Well, your book is fast-paced. There's lots of action that takes place within the book. And can you just give us just a snapshot of what it's about?
Well, what it's about an Irish family in the 1840s during the potato famine. And they're dying there. They're dying because there's nothing to eat. So the father, he decided the family's got to move. We got to move to North America to get away from it. So they can keep alive. And they talk about what it was like to get out of Ireland. It was horrifying. They lost millions of people during that potato famine. And I talk about their ship cruise. Their ship got them to Quebec, and what it was like on the ship when the Black Death was there. They got quarantined there, and there's so many people on it. They just take the dead bodies off the ship onto that island there, and that was it for them. And then the father decided he had hooked up with a little English miner from Cork, and he showed them how to mine. They teamed up together. They went to Virginia City, and something happened there. So it was bad. So the woman had to take over, the mother, Megan, she had to take over the family, learn how to live. And now at that time, there's only couple of ways to make a living. Washing dishes or hooking up with some guy who just needs a wife or something like that. But she took the option where she could do what she could and make the most money.
So she did end up on the banks of Wild Horse Creek.
Well, that's a daughter, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
Megan got killed in their line of business. So Kate took over the business and started moving up from Virginia City up to the Wild Horse, where they heard there's a gold strike, and that's where it went.
Right.
That she.
Well, you presented in a very imaginative way. I found the book really easy to read, and like I said, it was very fast-paced. So I just wanted to ask about your writing style. How do you go about formatting your writing, and how often do you write?
Well, I try to write as often as I can, but you gotta be inspired that day to write. I guess I should do it if I'm proper. It'd be 2 or 3 hours a day, but I can't do that. Mm-hmm. I got to do it when I feel like it.
Right.
You have to feel like it at the moment. I went down to the Wild Horse and just sat there and just sat on a slag pile and just imagine what it was like there sometimes. Right. And then I have a tape, and I tape my stories, what I'm talking about, by myself.
Right. So you really immerse yourself in the experience.
Oh yeah.
So Bill, your book has been out, 4, 5, 6 months?
That's about it.
What's the reaction been?
Well, I've nothing but favorable, because I've got a lot of people saying, is there going to be a sequel? Mm-hmm. Well, I had to wait to see how it was going to be received, and I've been very lucky. A lot of people say, where's that sequel coming now, eh? So there's probably going to be a sequel, more than likely.
Well, Bill, we'll talk a little bit about the publishing. You and I work fairly closely to get your book out and to get it published. It seemed like you had some ideas, I had some ideas, and they went together quite nicely. Are you happy with the way the book came together?
Pretty happy, yes. But I know there's it's like it's my first novel. And it's hard to write a novel. You know, it's hard. And I know where my shortcomings are now, better than when I did this first novel. I know what I have to do now, a lot better, and it's going to be better.
Yeah. So that gives you something to work on in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you in conclusion here, Bill, you've written the 2 books, and when you go out and market them, do they go hand in hand? Or are you able to talk to people about both books?
Well, yes, that's what I want to do, yes. Because anybody who's read the first book, you know, they're kind of curious about the second book, and that's what's going on in Kimberley right now, because people are saying, well, where's that second book you've been telling us about for years? I says, it's out now. Just go look for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Bill. It's great to have you as a guest. Again, the book is Wild Horse Kate.
Yeah.
The author is Bill Roberts. Bill is from Kimberley. Thank you for being our guest on Talking Kootenay Books.
And thank you very much, Keith, and thank you for the film crew, too.
So, my name is Keith Powell, and this is Talking Kootenay Books.